In Chapter 10, you will learn to run an effective meeting. You will be able to use facilitation strategies to have a successful meeting. We have spoken before how you could train as a facilitator who is a specialist who helps people design effective meetings and then acts as the meeting leader. Some planners get the top facilitator certification, while others learn it and practice it on their own and become better at it. A lot of companies seek to hire for their group facilitation services because they want someone who is neutral. It is always harder for a top official, meaning an elected politician or an executive director of your organization, to appear neutral. This is why you want to hire outside of your organization people to do this job. Hiring a professional facilitator will allow your agency to fully engage and focus on the dialogue. Plus, you get a report at the end that you don't have to write. You might ask, how can you hire someone that doesn't know anything about your organization in order to facilitate your meeting? Well, facilitators do not have to be from your agency because they just have to manage the process. This means that the facilitator doesn't need to know that much about the topic at hand. Their skills are mostly about managing a meeting, listening, asking questions, summarizing what they heard from the group, and helping the group to move towards a decision. In order to know what a group needs, a facilitator who has been hired as a consultant usually will interview over the phone for, say, 20 minutes or so different members of the organization or stakeholders whose name was passed along by the agency. This helps the facilitator to prepare an agenda and a process that is appropriate for the group. How a meeting is run tells participants whether they are being treated with respect, whether their opinions matter, and what their relative relationship to each other is. This is why you want to establish ground rules in order to make sure people respect each other. You can say things like, please turn off your cell phones, let's pay attention to the facilitator and what everybody is saying in the conversation. Or you can say, make sure that you're not speaking over other people. We will speak one person at a time. Please do not talk to the facilitator, only talk to each other, have a conversation. We will ensure confidentiality, so whatever is said in this meeting stays in this meeting. As you may know, this is Las Vegas rule. And then you will ask the group if there's anything else that they would like to add as part of the ground rules. It is the facilitator's role to create a climate of mutual respect, and this is why we create ground rules, which you can share with everyone at the beginning of a facilitated meeting. James Cranston also mentioned that when the audience feels that the leader has been fair and reasonable, the leader, if is challenged by one of the participants, they will usually be supported by the rest of the participants or the audience. If the structure is not considered equitable or reasonable, then the leader's power or the facilitator's power is diminished and it is like very much subject to be challenged. There are three general principles of meeting leadership. People accept meeting leadership that is in their interest. It's important that you remember that you must lead the process and not the content. This is why the facilitator is neutral and it could be from an outside organization. That is actually preferable. Symbols of wealth, power, or prestige must be avoided during public meetings as well. First, let's discuss people accepting meeting leadership that is in their interest. So, a good facilitator recognizes that to accomplish anything in a meeting, there must be some kind of structure. Limits needs to be set on the topic at hand, and procedures must be established for the recognition of the people who are speaking. For example, having a tent with someone's name so you can record who spoke and what they said. Lead the process, not the content. The meeting leader's job is to ensure a fair and efficient process. The audience understands the need for this process, so participants grant the meeting leader some limited authority as long as they're convinced that the meeting leader is exercising his or her authority on behalf of a good meeting. The minute a meeting leader assumes the role of an advocate or comments on a content of the meeting, the audience will see the leader action as on behalf of a particular outcome, not just having a good meeting. It could be very problematic. The agency is more powerful and has infinitely more resources than the public. In other words, power symbols evoke some of the control problems they are designed to prevent. An effective leader is able to provide a structure, yet is flexible enough to change formalistic meeting rules when appropriate. It accepts comments from the audience, even though they might be emotionally laden, and conveys enthusiasm, sincerity, and commitment for the public participation process. We previously talked about the meeting structure. Facilitators engage in certain characteristic behaviors designed to provide sufficient structure so the meeting accomplishes its goals and brings about a positive atmosphere of collaboration. There is a very good website that you will actually check it out in the homework, and it's called liberatingstructures.com. You need to scroll down until you see the image that is like shown in the slide, and then you can see there are different ways of facilitating discussions. And in class we already did the um, cafe conversations and or the conversation cafe, which is also similar to the world cafe, and open space. But there are other ones that we have not explored in class, like the fishbowl. The fishbowl is very similar to the salmon circle. Fishbowl planning involves citizens addressing citizens regarding a proposal through a workshop format. In this assignment, I will want you to choose a technique that no one else has chosen in the class to discuss, and you will discuss it. So explain the technique in your own words and tell me what you would like about this technique. How do you envision yourself using it in the future and under which circumstances? To go back to the idea of structure, an effective leader is structured yet is very flexible. So the idea is that, or that is the idea behind this website of liberating structures. Facilitators engage in certain characteristic behaviors designed to provide sufficient structure so the meeting accomplishes its goals and it brings about a positive atmosphere of collaboration. The facilitator's role remains neutral, clarifies the role of the group, it focuses group energy, it keeps the groups on task, directs processes, encourages everyone to participate, protects members and ideas from being attacked by other participants. Facilitators summarize what people have been said in a conversation, and it also clarifies the direction that the group might go based on like what it has listened to see if there's some kind of consensus, if people are having similar ideas. It elicits clarity regarding the meeting follow up. In other words, as facilitator, it the role is to propose, to suggest, to invite, and then consult with the participants without having or advocating for a particular outcome. Facilitation often takes far more skill than being a traditional chair of a meeting, and a facilitator might exercise considerable control over the meeting. This is why a lot of people are trained in the art and science of facilitation. The facilitator's role is to create a climate of mutual respect and psychological safety that it makes possible for people to consider creative new solutions and move from preconceived positions. But how a facilitator can remain neutral? Well, it uses participants' language as opposed to their own language. So it's very important to capture the language of the participants in writing. And in order to do this, the facilitator will often repeat what the person said. This is why you hear a lot of facilitations or facilitators saying, "Oh, I hear that X, Y, and Z." And it will ask the individual or group for corrections to make sure that they're listening and interpreting in the correct manner of what people, to try to capture what the meaning of what people say. So after they will say, "I hear that X, Y, and Z," they will ask, "Did I get this right?" And people can clarify. So a good facilitator will always ask for clarification. It is very important to note that you have to keep the meeting on track and focus. So if people say things that are not related to the topic at hand, a facilitator would add that to something that is called the parking lot. Facilitators need to make sure they record everything that is said, even if it's not discussed, because this is how people know that you are listening to them. And everything that is brought is important in a way, even though it doesn't help to move forward the conversation, you want to record that. And this is why you create a parking lot. You want to move the issue at hand and thus need to be aware of your goal and the topic that you need to discuss to make a breakthrough. Some facilitators give additional guidance to participants about the kinds of things we can have in the parking lot. Like in this image, we have one that it has a quadrant and it has, these are positive comments, or these are opportunities. These are questions that people have. These are aha moments for us and for the group. It's a good idea to also give people sticky notes so they can write them down as they think about them. You can also have your sticky notes, and then when someone gets off topic, say, "That's a great comment, but it's not directly related to the discussion. Please write it down and we will add it to the parking lot." As established, facilitators help the meeting to be on track and focused. They clarify the issue at hand. They also acknowledge people's feelings. So you'll see a facilitator saying, "I hear that you are frustrated because of X, Y, and Z." Then you can state the problem in a positive way. As you point out, there is frustration around issue X. But what does this mean for X, Y, and Z? So you, in order to avoid conflict, the problem should be stated in a constructive way. And to go back to the idea of the parking lot, it's important that you also document if people have like feelings, positive feelings or negative feelings in the parking lot, and you will revise this at the very end. So it's important that the parking lot, it doesn't get completely forgotten, but that you go back in the meeting and you say, "Okay, this is the great breakthrough that we made together in this meeting." And ideally, that will be the consensus that you are building. But for those things that they were not a consensus, they were contested, or they were simply unrelated to the meeting, you want to go back to the parking lot and say, okay, these are the things that we didn't resolve in this meeting, but it's important that we keep it in our minds, or maybe we can address them in the future, whatever you want to do with the parking lots. The important things is that you recorded what happened in that conversation, and you have a record of it. Facilitators often suggest a procedure or problem solving approach. One of the important responsibilities of a facilitator is to sense when participants are coming to an agreement or a consensus. James Creighton offers some hints of things that you should avoid, like judging or criticizing the idea of participants. Using the role of facilitator to push your own ideas is also a bad idea. Making significant procedural decisions without consulting the participants is actually not a good practice either. And taking up the group time with lengthy comments, a facilitator really needs to monitor their own time. At a minimum, the facilitator needs to know enough to be able to follow the discussion. So goes back to the idea of how much knowledge the facilitator needs to have in any given subject matter. If the facilitator is too directly involved on the subject matter, he or she might have opinions about the issue that make it hard to remain neutral, or may be seen by some of the parties as biased or partial towards a particular point of view or organization. Meeting success is influenced more by the collaborative norms of the group than by the knowledge and skills of the group facilitator in a particular subject matter. The power of the group to produce results is rooted in the quality of the relationship between participants and also how much they know about the topic. In high performing groups, the five states of mind are the self organizing values for every group and in every